Hello and welcome to this video on how to use Google Sheets to create graphs and to analyze data and do some common calculations. So this video is going to walk us through a little bit of how we use a software program like Google Sheets to do some of our work for us when it comes to making graphs, plotting trend lines, and even doing simple mathematical calculations and equations for us. So first we need to look at some data. And so I've got a graphing assignment here that I'm going to work from. And this graphing assignment, I'm going to do exercise 1 here. And in exercise 1, we are asked to look at this solubility data for barium chloride dihydrate in the form of this table. Now, the wonderful thing about Google Sheets or any software that crunches numbers for us is that if I have another electronic document, data table, I should be able to just click and drag over the whole thing. And either using my keyboard, Control C, or the copy menu right here, I should be able to paste this in, Control V, and the whole table comes with me. I don't need to do anything else. So this is really valuable if you've got your data saved in a data table that's not in Excel or not in Google Sheets. You can basically click and copy and paste the data in, and it'll work, very, very, very easily. So I've got my temperature data. I've got my solubility data. Let's do the first things first. Let's draw a graph. Now in Google Sheets, drawing a graph is relatively easy. I'm going to click and drag over my data, and I'm going to go to Insert, Chart, and because I had a heading here, and because I had numbers here, it's going to input for me what it thinks my best values are in terms of, it's going to give me a title based on what I drew. It's going to give me axis labels based on what those charts are. And it is going to do it assuming that the column here on the left is the x-axis, which is the horizontal axis, and that the column here on the right is the y-axis, which would be the vertical axis. That is the assumption that Google makes. Now, if that's incorrect over here, you can fix that. So what if I wanted the axes switched? Well, I can do that. I can say, okay, the x-axis actually was the solubility. The series, which is the y-axis, was actually the temperature, and it'll flip that graph for me. I just needed to do a little bit of moving. But I actually wanted it the other way. So I'm going to switch it back here and draw it on like this. Now, over here, I can customize. Line chart is what it defaulted to. I actually want a scatter chart most of the time when I'm graphing things, because I'm usually looking for trends and I want to be able to draw trend lines, and a line graph does not give me the ability to draw a trend line. Now, the other thing that I want to do is I'm going to go to customize here. Now I get the chance to look in, I can change the chart style, I can change the titles. So I don't like this particular title, so I'm going to change it to solubility of barium chloride in water at various temperatures. Have the ability to change the formatting, the font, bold it, align it, whatever I want. So if I want that centered, which I do, that's what I want to do. I want to change my titles as well. I actually like the horizontal axis title, temperature in degrees Celsius, but I want to add a unit to this vertical axis title. And so I'm going to change that to grams of barium chloride per 100 grams of water. So I've changed my axes titles. Here's the series. I can change the format. Let's say I want black dots on there. I want them a little bit bigger. I can add data labels, or I can add a trend line. So I have a linear trend line here, and I can get myself the equation for that line, the r squared for that line, which tells me that this particular line isn't all that linear. R squared is a number between 0 and 1. The closer that number is to 1, the more linear the data is. 0.923 is not bad, but it's not very linear either. Generally, we're looking for things somewhere between 0.97 and 1. The closer it is to 1, again, the better our data are going to be. But in this case, I don't need a trend line because the trend here is definitely not linear. Now I can try to fix that. I can try and look at, maybe I don't want a linear trend line. Maybe I want to look at something that's more exponential or a polynomial. And we can see that going to a polynomial, my r squared increased pretty considerably. If I change it, so this was a, this is a parabola here. If I change that to a cubic function, it gets better. And obviously the more I hone in, the better it's going to be overall. At some point we reach a level of ridiculousness though. So, but if I know what my trend data is supposed to be, so that can help a lot in determining what kind of trend line to make. But again, we're going to leave this alone here. And actually, in here, there are lots of different ways to kind of go about it. Scatter plots are the best way. If you can get a scatter plot that actually connects, that's kind of the ideal in this kind of situation. And so that might warrant looking at, okay, well, maybe I do want a line chart that has smooth connectors to it. And now I've got the bullet points on there, and at least shows that there is some kind of there's some kind of relationship here, but it's clearly not linear. So that's the basic essence of graphing here in Sheets. Pretty easy. Now you can do things that will help. So for example, scale factor, it kind of gives a default scale, but you can change that. So so let's say that you want to set your values. I want this to go from 0 to 75. It'll do that. That one cuts off the last data point. You also have more abilities to just change things based on what you see. But in this case, they've plotted it pretty well. Grid lines. You can add more grid lines. You can show minor grid lines. So on the vertical axis and the horizontal, I'm going to show those up. So if I want to do things like showing that every 10 degrees, I can add extra grid lines in between. I can add little grid lines in between those as well. So you've got options to make it a little bit better. And this helps with your level of estimation. So that's graphing at its kind of heart, the basics of graphing. What if I wanted to do something other than just plot the data as they are? You know, what if I wanted to do some other kind of function? Well, let's say, for example, I wanted to look at the same data, but using temperature in Kelvin and the logarithm of solubility. How would I go about doing these calculations? Well, one way would obviously be knowing that Kelvin is Celsius plus 273.15. I could hand calculate each one of these and turn them into values. The problem with this method is that, I mean, it really isn't all that much faster. It didn't save any time. If I had to do more than 6 data points here, I kind of start to get a little bit tired. And especially for the logarithm here, I got to take the logarithm of 31.61, punch it into my calculator, transfer the number into here without making a mistake. It's kind of a pain. Well, these spreadsheets are equipped with formula writing abilities. All that you need to do to access formula writing is you begin your entry with the enter key. Hit, or excuse me, not enter, equals. You type in equals, automatically is going to recognize that you're trying to input a function, and you just tell it what you want it to do. Now you can say, I want 0 plus 273.15, and it'll calculate that for you. I want the logarithm of 31.61, and it'll calculate that for you. But again, that doesn't really save you all that much time. What you need to do is you need to teach Sheets how to perform the function that you want to perform. And the way to do that is to use the cells themselves as values rather than the numbers that they contain. So instead of doing this formula where I do 0, which is the number in the cell, plus 273.15, what if I put in the actual cell number itself, A2? So I'm going to say that I want A2 plus 273.15. And I'm going to get the same answer. But now watch what happens. Since I put a value in, I can do all of these calculations all at once at the same time. I know nothing happened when you watch this, so I'm going to rewind this. I'm going to take out all of these values. If I look on this box, you'll see that a blue button has appeared in the bottom right-hand corner. That little box turns your cursor into a crosshairs when you come across it. And if you click and drag from that spot, it'll take whatever is in that cell and immediately copy and paste it over everything that you drag it and drop it onto. Now, how did it know to do this? Well, because you told it what cell you wanted. And how the computer program interpreted it is, I need to take the cell that is 3 cells to my left and add 273.15 to it. So this one down here, 3 cells to the left is 10. This cell right here, 3 cells to the left is 20, and so on and so on. For the logarithm, I can do the exact same thing. Now, when I do advanced functions, I need to, so that would be anything trigonometric, averages, sums, anytime you need to do something other than simple adding, subtracting, multiplying, and dividing. What you can do is you put in the title of the function, which is the logarithm here, and then you put in a parenthesis, and then you put in what you want. So instead of 31.61, I'm going to put in B2, because that is the cell that contains the data that I want. And if I hit enter, it's going to do the calculation for me. Now look at this. Since we already did functions on the cells to the left, Google Sheets has suggested, well, maybe you're wanting to do this on this one too. And if I hit Control and Enter, it does that for me. Now, if I didn't want to do that, or if I didn't know about that, the other thing I could have done is the same thing that I did in this column here with temperature. Hover over the bottom right-hand square, click and drag to grab everything, and now I've got all of the data, all calculated, no mistakes in it. And I did 12 calculations in the span of seconds. This comes in handy when you have lots of data points, especially. Now to graph that, again, grab everything, go to Insert, Chart, and just double check that you got everything where you want it. I want the temperature on the x-axis, good. I want the logarithm on the y, good. I don't want a line chart. I want a scatter chart. And this time I'm going to check and see how good is this fit. Is it more linear this time? So I go to Series. I go to Trend Line. I tell it to display the equation and the R squared. And you can see we were at 0.92 in this chart. Doing this logarithm business got it up to 0.97. Still not great, but actually not that bad either. I can do all the same things that I did in the previous problem. I can look at chart style, so maybe I want to spruce this up a little bit or make it stand out. I'm going to use a background and a border. Maybe I'm going to change my fonts. My axis titles, actually that looks pretty good. Chart title. Yeah. And so all these things actually look pretty good already. Now, if I don't want to go through all of that, I can click and double click into any of these titles and edit it from there. And that does the same thing as finding it here. Now, I do want to fix my axes, so I'm gonna go ahead and touch those up and Go to my grid lines, horizontal axis. Get some minor grid lines on there, make them darker. Do the same thing for the vertical axis. So this graph isn't nearly as pretty as the last one, because I went and changed all the colors and whatnot, but you can see all the different things that we've done here to make the graph a little bit better. And so if you're familiar with the Google platform, it is a nice way to go ahead and use and analyze your data. If you prefer Microsoft Excel, I do have a video that walks through this same kind of process with these same practice problems in Excel as well. I'd encourage you to click the link at the end of this video, and it'll show up there. But that's all I have for this particular video. If you have any questions, feel free to drop them in the comments, or you can, if you're one of my students, you can drop me a message in my email and I'll get back to you as quick as I can. But until next time, have a good day.